Good evening, everybody. I'm Yvonne Simpson. I'm the membership convener for the Federation of Southeast Asia Pacific, but I'm also the mentor for a new initiative from my club, Soroptimists International of Westland, and we're calling it NZ Soroptimists Online. And we're wanting to bring through webinars, issues and activities that Soroptimist clubs are involved with. This month is a very special month because it's gynecological month. Oops, I stumbled on that one. And I'm just so excited about the three presenters that we've got. We've got Kath from Western Australia. We've got Andrea from Wellington and Danelle from Queensland. And they will each talk about a different cancer and about their journeys and their involvements and what they're doing. So I want to get started because I'm very aware of the time. Just a reminder before so we're going to go with Kath first. Just a reminder about the handouts that are available. We've got Soroptimists International has a position statement on many things, and there's a position statement on reproductive health and what the official stance is for SI, and that's in your handout section. So please download that if you wish to. There are PDFs on the presentations and other items that are from the speakers. This is a chance to reach out. It's a chance for Soroptimists to be informed. It's a chance for Soroptimists to share. And at the end, when we have the question time after each presentation, we'll ask you to put your cameras on so we can share who's here, because we know who's here, but you don't. We've had 51 registrations, plus about 9 who are gathering together in a group, so about 60 people are interested in this tonight. On the line tonight, we actually have 32 and a whole group that will be looking at it as the recording. And I will send each of you a recording so you can watch it or share it with your friends, because this is information that's absolutely about education and empowerment of women. And so without further ado, I think we'll start with you, Kath, if you don't mind, and share your journey, how you came to be involved, and the work that you've been doing for quite some time as an advocate for this.
Oh, thank you, Yvonne, for that introduction. So I just need to work out how I get to my next slide. Oh, I see. Yeah, how do I get to the next slide? Sorry.
Can you, in the top right-hand corner of your screen, you've got a square, and if you press onto that, you'll fill up your whole screen.
To the right, where it says audience view?
No, there's a little cross where that closes it down. Next to it is a little box, and then another little box behind it.
Right. Okay.
That should take up your whole page. Have you clicked on that?
Yeah, okay, there we go. Right, hello everybody. I am a survivor of a radical vulvectomy, which is the removal of my clitoris, vulva and lymph glands. And I just think it's time we opened up some of the really depth of women and gynecological health and cancers. So, oh, sorry, this has gone straight to the, sorry.
Click slideshow up the top there, Kath, along the wee toolbar.
Okay. Right, so there we go.
You can go.
Okay.
If she goes up to slide in the orange bar, you've got slideshow 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 along.
Yeah. No, I've got it now.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. So I for 27 years, I've been lobbying to sort of change the way we think of the perspective of women's health, particularly gynecological and reproductive health. So this year we had the Red Knickers Day, which we had at Kings Park in Perth, and I was the Jean Hales Women's Health Champion. So I was very proud to be part of that initiative. But I want women to be better informed so that we can get preventative knowledge before we even get a cancer, because most women don't know which bit is which. And so I've had to learn to try and convince women of the need for this information. So quite often I'm put in the too hard basket. But as you can tell, the problem with fibroids, periods, endometriosis, polycystic ovaries, and it's the whole box and dice of gynecology that needs addressing. And the more that, like, the Soroptimists talk about these things and put it on their agenda, the more we can help save lives. So I see the solution of the International Gynecological Awareness Day, and which RANZCOG, Royal Australian New Zealand Gynecology Oncology Group, obstetrics, they actually promoted it on Twitter this year, so that was pretty good. But I see the solution of us having a great gynae debate, which I've had that once before, and it was very successful. We had professionals on the stage, and we had they were putting humour into a very serious topic. And when we see the professionals using this as a tool, then I think we as women need to work out how we can get into the minds of women. So my life experience, in 1994, I had an abnormal pap smear. I was told to pop off and have my cervix lasered, and I had no idea why they were doing that. We used to see signs on the back of toilet doors back in 1994, and that's how we got our education. But so I ended up having a lump in my clitoris, which is in the vulva. And most women call their vulva as a vagina. But let me tell you, the clitoris is not in the vagina. So I don't know why in this day and age we still use incorrect terminology. So I went to lots of women's organisations, and it's like, you know, the medical professionals were the only ones to talk about these things. So I found another lady who had the same operation as me, but our doctors said it was too depressing to connect women up with other women. We could do that for breast cancer, but for vulval cancer, it's a different issue. But you see, that is run on a male model. And, you know, we need more of a female model of how do we want this. So I ended up putting an ad in the Women's Day, and all these ladies hand wrote me these horrible, horrible stories. But when I went back to the women's groups, it was like, well, you can't do that. So it really saddened me. So these are some other women that have died of vulval cancer. This lady on the bottom right-hand corner, she just died recently, and she's a lawyer. The other two ladies, Lynn Ellard, and I'm allowed to say her name because she gave me permission to use her name, and she pleaded with me to share this message. She was a renowned soroptimist, and it was very sad that, you know, when I saw her dying, and yet I still didn't see much about gynecological health. So that's one of the reasons why I sit here. But this is how I used to feel, and a lot of women still feel the same. It's like, you know people are talking about you, you know they're laughing at you, and you're standing there naked, feeling naked. And I thought, why are we like that? Until I found the word pudendum in the dictionary, and the Latin version of that word says, female genitalia, one who should and ought to be ashamed, the shameful part of a woman. Well, I've got to the point now, well, I refuse to be ashamed. While I know women are dying and suffering, I am not going to be quiet. So I don't really care what people say about me. But in the early days, on the left-hand side, that was the flyer I was given. And I would say, but that's not what a vulva looks like. And it was like, I was treated like I was trying to bring pornography out. But you see, this is all part of history of women's health. And if we look at the history of where we come from and how we can go forward, but I'm pleased to say that the New South Wales Cancer Council, Dr. Kendra Sundquist, she took me on board, and she ended up getting a vulva diagram in 2005, I think it was. And I was very proud for that to happen. But unfortunately, the diagram on the right is by an Australian research gynecological cancer centre, and they don't or won't or can't put a vulva diagram on there because they tell me that they don't get funding towards vulval cancer. In the meantime, I see women dying. And so people say, well, it's only 420 women in Australia. Does it matter? Well, to me, it matters when you see how much these women are suffering and dying. As a matter of fact, a young 23-year-old girl has just had an article in the Perth Now. She's 23. She had to get married last week before she had to go through all her treatment and possibly dying. I mean, you know, I know this is very tragic, but this is what we need to listen and understand. Excuse me. I did a presentation to the Australian Nurses and Midwifery Conference last year, and the wall of vaginas. I've been to this man's studio in London, and I said, but they're not vaginas. And he said, but that's what women call it. So when I presented at the Australian Nurses and Midwifery Conference, I wanted to sort of put up a wall of testicles, and I wanted the nurses and the midwives to sort of think, but they're not testicles, and the same as the wall is not vaginas. So can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So these are just some of the things that I've done over the last so many years. I presented at Soroptimists in London, trying to sort of plant seeds about gynecological awareness, and Zonta London, and we went to the Royal College of Gynecology in London, and they have the second female president ever, and so she was planting lots of female input into that, and she's no longer the president, but I'm still on the Women's Voices panel at the college and also at RANZCOG. So I'm doing the best that I can, but it's just damn hard work if the women's groups don't have this on the agenda. And that's what I'm pleading with Soroptimists and Zonta and all the other women's groups to, you know, to come on board with this. So I presented to the Soroptimist International in Kuala Lumpur in 2019, and Anusha, the president, she was amazing. But I said, but how am I going to say vulva in front of all these ethnic women? Because I was told not to say those naughty words in front of ethnic women. And I thought, but how else are we supposed to learn? But I've got a knickers campaign, I'll show you later on, cardboard cutout knickers, and we decorate them and have a bit of fun and a bit of laughter, and it opens the conversations. And I showed one of those knickers to we had some young girls in Kuala Lumpur, and they laughed and they thought it was funny. And I said, oh, would you be able to do this back at your community? And they said, no, their elders people wouldn't let them do it. And I was saddened by that, because how are we supposed to attract younger women to these women's organisations if we don't talk about sex or gynecological or reproductive health? So these are just some of the other presentations I've had in Fremantle and Maylands, and you know, we're putting fun into gynecology, which one of our last speakers here, I believe, is going to be showing how we can incorporate some fun. These were some of the executives that we had at the Red Knickers Day last week, and yeah, I think they are starting to see the importance of even the Red Knickers campaign. So why do we need a Gynecological Awareness Day? We need to encourage women to ask for help. But how can you ask for help if you don't have the basic knowledge? We need to hear the stories so others can learn from their experiences and have greater community education. So this is just some of my media work. When I was in London in 2018, I'm pleased to say I was on BBC TV, Women's Hour. And then when I came back to Perth, that was the year I won my WA West Australian Senior Australian of the Year. I asked whether I could go on the community radio station, and they said their constituents wouldn't be interested in gynecological health. Well, you don't speak to Kath Mazzella like that anymore. I use from whence I came. You know, I don't put up with that sort of thing anymore. So the West Australian Health Minister in 2020, he spoke about my gynecological work in Parliament, along with Amber Jade Sanderson, who is now the current Health Minister in WA. We had this article in the RANZCOG magazine, and on the front cover they had this picture, and it blew me away because it was in 1811, and I questioned how far have we come of women since 1811, and maybe we've come a long way, but not enough in my eyes. So yeah, oh, that's just the president at the Royal College in London, and she says many issues affecting women's health still remain off limits. The stigma often causes women to ignore concerns, while fear of embarrassment can leave them suffering in silence. We must do more to address this, to break down the taboos. So this is one way we can address it, and I encourage your community to get involved, getting the quilting ladies to make quilts. And it was from the quilt that the WA quilters made that I was able to convince BBC TV to allow me to come on and speak. And the Perth Modern Quilters, their quilt, I took it to the Country Women's Association. And it was from that I was asked to speak at their 90th conference. So you can tell that, you know, it is through the arts and through humour we can break some of these barriers. But on the right is the ladies making undies. And if we just decorate it as a pair of undies, but if you lift up the flap of the undies, underneath that has all the gynecological diagrams, including the vulva. So I just think it's a nice subtle way to, oh, here's an example of what you can do, and just make it easy. I've also created this chatterbox, which shows all of the diagram, but it's like people say, oh yes, we used to have those at school, and so that breaks the ice. So that's what we have to do to try and break some of the ice. This was I did a presentation at a community group, and the Aboriginal artist, sorry, I'll have to get her name. Oh, sorry, I've forgotten that. I should write it on there. I'll send it off to you. And I just love that piece of art. But these are some of the ethnic women that I've spoken to who are really interested in it. Oh, tell me more. So this was at King Edward Hospital. They've celebrated the Gynae Awareness Day for 8 years. So it shows that it's already in progress, and we need to focus more on how we can go further than we do, and which we're doing here today. So I'm really proud that Yvonne is organising this. So let's do it, girls. Join the campaign, and we all come together and celebrate our magnificent bodies. And so let's take it out of that too hard basket and put it into the basket where it belongs, with better knowledge, freedom, confidence, assertive, understanding, compassion, protective, passion, empowerment. And most of all is love. And the empowerment is to gaining the knowledge, because I have found that some women sadly have, because the way they've been socially programmed, that it's like, you know, I'm a bit tarnished, and I know that I'm not tarnished, and I know that some women are dying, and it's just time that we talked about some of the cancers. But again, I will say again, let's learn about our bodies and the risks and symptoms, and then we can help prevent some of these cancers happening. So on that note, viva la vulva to everybody.
Thank you, Kath. You're an absolute inspiration, and you're taking on what is often a taboo subject, and you're making it fun. You're opening the door to conversation and awareness. And I remember that presentation in KL, and meeting you, and the thought that here is this little tiny person with this absolutely 100% energy to do this, and to be committed to it for so long and so consistently. And if you Google Kath, you'll find her list of credentials are very extensive. The awards, the recognition you've been given, but the work that you continue to do, and the essential message around information is empowerment, and hopefully that will mean prevention. But I absolutely admire what you're doing, and thank you very much for making it yourself available from Perth tonight to share the story. And I hope you stay on, so that if there are any questions that people would like to write in the question box, we can ask those perhaps towards the end. But thank you for that start, Kath, and thank you for being flexible about our technical glitches, which I think we're still continuing with. So we had all these other little PowerPoint slides to show, which we can't do at the moment. So thank you for that. We'll move right on to Andrea. So if those of you in the audience, bear with us as we get the technical aspects up, so that Andrea, if you can share your screen. Maddie, I might need a hand from you to do that.
Okay, I'll show screen.
This is a learning curve for us all. We're building the plane as we fly it a bit. Oh, there you are. And
can you see that,
our well planned. Yeah, very clear, very clear.
Okay, good.
And it's filled up the screen. So we're ready to go. I'm really thrilled that Andrea can be here as well. Andrea's recovered or recovering from COVID. So we're really glad that you've got your voice back and that you are able to be with us tonight to share this important project that Soroptimists in our country are doing. So the floor is
Thank you,
yours.
Yvonne. Yeah, thank you, Yvonne, and thank you everybody for coming along tonight. I have the pleasure of introducing our national project, which is on ovarian cancer for Soroptimist International, Aotearoa, New Zealand. So this came out of, it started with Maddie actually, who attended a webinar from Rural Women New Zealand, and ovarian cancer was one of the things they were focusing on, and she got really passionate about it. I think it's fair to say those of you who know Maddie will know that she does that. And so we started as the Wellington Club, my local club here. We wanted to do some advocacy, and so we had a vote on what we would advocate on, and ovarian cancer came out as being the topic that we would choose. And from a Soroptimist in perspective, it ticks a lot of boxes. It's about women. It's about women's health. It's about empowering women, education and advocacy. So there's a lot of scope there. And then we had the opportunity to put forward a national project which got voted in earlier this year. So we run this with a small team, which I'm delighted to be a part of people. And we have all of our clubs around the country doing things towards the project. And it's around those three aspects that you can see on the screen. So advocacy, education and fundraising. So why ovarian cancer? Oh, this is just a summary of what we're going to talk about. Why ovarian cancer? I'm having trouble seeing my screen. I'm having my own technical difficulties, Yvonne, and where to find more information at the end as well. So why ovarian cancer? Well, I think Kath's just given a really good summary of why gynecological cancer is so important and such a big issue for us as women. And the history of women's health, which Kath also touched on, that's one of the reasons why I believe that ovarian cancer is such a big issue. In New Zealand, in Aotearoa, it kills around 1 woman every 48 hours, which is more than women that get killed in the road toll in New Zealand each year. It's often diagnosed late, and there's a number of reasons for that. The signs can be very subtle, and that's one of the things I've learned through this project. It can be things like peeing more often, feeling full when you eat less than you would normally do. It's pelvic pain, abdominal pain, losing weight. There's a whole range of things that are quite non-specific, and also thinking about the history of women's health and the link to hysteria and women not being trusted to report what's happening in their bodies and to understand what's going on. So that's one of the reasons for that. Not being heard by medical professionals and delays in taking action. Access to and affordability of the diagnostics and treatment, particularly given those symptoms are often vague and non-specific. So it's often found very late in the course of the disease. And so the project we've put together aims to address each of these barriers at a national and a local level. So these are some examples of some thoughts and some sort of a summary really of what we're doing. So educate. We thought it was really important to start with educating ourselves as Soroptimists and as clubs to learn ourselves about ovarian cancer, what the symptoms were and what we should do about it, and to support others as well, to support women and spread the message. We sort of see ourselves as almost the core of an onion, spreading this message out amongst our own networks, our own communities, and taking the opportunity to talk about ovarian cancer and gynecological cancer and women's health more broadly. Which I absolutely agree with Kath. It's been quite interesting, the reaction we've had when we start talking about ovaries and uterus and some of those terms that some people are less comfortable with than others, but I think it's just got to become part of our everyday vocabulary. There's no reason why it shouldn't. So education's a big piece. Advocacy. There's a big opportunity for advocacy. We have supported the petition of Jane Ludeman from Cure Our Ovarian Cancer in New Zealand, who is actually presenting to the Health Select Committee in New Zealand this afternoon. She and her organisation have produced a national cancer report, which I can't wait to read and get my hands on, actually, a National Ovarian Cancer report. And they are asking for funding for research and for better diagnostic services, for working with the medical profession to actually encourage them and provide them with better information about diagnosing ovarian cancer and taking those symptoms seriously. We have a concept around a campaign called See Us, Hear Us, Help Us, which came out of that fact that often women feel disempowered, I suppose, when you're in front of the medical profession, especially when you're going with something that can be vague or non-specific, or could be put down to psychosomatic symptoms. See us, hear us, and help us is the thinking behind that campaign. So we're putting some stuff around that as well. And so that's something we can do at a national level, and we'll get support at a local level too with the clubs. And then fundraising as well. So we've got 3 charities that we've identified in Aotearoa to support. So we have Cure Ovarian Cancer with Jane Ludeman. We have Talk Peach, which is a gynecological cancer support foundation, including ovarian cancer. And Canine Medical Detection, which is an organisation in Dunedin who are training dogs to detect cancers in urine. So they've done it for prostate cancer and bowel cancer, and then the ovarian cancer is the next one on their list. So we're supporting that group as well, which would be amazing to get an early diagnostic tool for this cancer. So more information. Maddie and her wonderful team have put together a Facebook page for our national project, and it's on Instagram as well, I believe. And we have a handout. You're welcome to get in touch with us through the email address that's on the screen, and there is a handout in the handouts list there too, just with some more information in it that you're very welcome to take away, and get in touch with us if you've got any questions or need any further information. So that's our national project. Am I back with you, Eva?
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether you had the video or whether we need to ask Maddie to put that on.
No, I don't. Sorry.
I've just emailed it to you, to your address.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yes.
Maddie's there. As I said to everybody here, we've had quite a major technical glitch with our material. So if Maddie could.
One if we could please move on to the next presentation, and we can play the video at the end if that's possible.
No, we can't do that because we need the sequence. So if you could look at your, we'll do a few other things. Well, if you would look for that, because it needs to happen before Danelle's. Sorry, yeah. So if we go back and give Maddie a chance to find that. So Andrea, what's been the uptake, and what sort of reports are you getting from clubs and what they're doing?
It's been really interesting, actually. This is the first time we've done a national project like this, which has involved each of the clubs doing things in their communities. And it's something I think Soroptimists are very, very good at, identifying what the needs are in their communities, what the opportunities are. And pulling together the education and the fundraising is a big opportunity. So we've had for September, which is Gynecological Cancer Awareness Month, there have been clubs doing things like fundraisers, high teas, sharing educational information, and just thinking about how they can do that with their communities. It's also, I think, the feedback we're getting from our members, just around understanding more about their own health in their own bodies, and the history that's led to the fact that women's health is undervalued. And some of my own reading, this really annoys me, so sorry if I get a bit passionate about it, but I was reading about women's health and the fact that women on average get treated an hour later reporting the same level of pain as men, and they more often get treated with sedatives than pain relief medication because of that perception that women are hysterical and neurotic, and can't possibly be true because we report pain differently. And then there was also the piece of information that until the early 1990s in the US, women were barred from participating in clinical trials, which actually means that there hasn't been a lot of research done into women women's health issues. I mean, women have ovaries, men don't. And it's not only women, it's ethnic groups, different ethnic groups as well. So if you're not a white man, a lot of our traditional medical knowledge doesn't actually apply directly to you. So you put it in that context, and there's a really good book called Unwell Women by Eleanor Cleckhorn, and she goes right back into the history, prehistoric, well, very, very ancient history, and how women and girls were pretty much valued for having sex and having babies, and the cure for everything was to have sex or to have a baby, and nothing else really mattered. The wandering womb concept, where if a woman had respiratory issues, for example, it's because the womb had wandered up into her chest and was causing chaos in there. So this whole history and where it's come from, and how these things that we take for granted just aren't true, and there's inherent bias in the whole system, and that really plays out in ovarian cancer.
Thank you. My club, SA Westland, held a women's health forum last night, and afterwards I had a young woman come up to me, and she would be late 20s, I think, and she said, "I never knew there was such a thing as ovarian cancer," and she was whispering because she was so shocked. And then we had a doctor present, and she presented extremely well on things like women's health as you age was one of the themes, and so they went through menopause, and then we had a Maori health perspective, and then the gynecological cancer area. And she was telling Kath earlier that she was upfront about how the vulva cancer was, the ins and outs of that, the ovarian cancer. She gave a very good overview, very unemotional, factual, easy to take on board. And I think that that's what clubs can do very simply. We had an amazing turnout of women from our community, small community, with a lot of women turning out for that presentation. So it is a thing that clubs can do quite readily and reach out for other women. So I congratulate you on putting it forward, Andrea, and for the New Zealand clubs to get behind this, because 48 women a day in New Zealand is unacceptable if it is preventable. And
a woman every 48 hours, every 2 days.
Yes.
48 women a day.
Let's hope not. Okay. Oh, I knew I had the number right.
You did.
Anyway,
yes. I just didn't want to frighten anybody, and this is more than we need to.
Exactly. Let's not get to that point. Okay, so I just want to check in with Maddie whether she's found that video. Sorry, are we?
I can play it now for everybody.
Oh, thank you, Maddie, and thank you for the sequence. The sequence Danelle has said is very important, so thank you for that. So if you'd share the video, the message from Jane Luderman. Rachel, Maddie, and I are going to have a wonderful debrief after this. The technical aspects have been a nightmare. So thank you everybody for your patience. But Maddie, I can't see the video. I can only see 4 presenters.
Okay. Hold on a minute.
So the sharing the screen is an issue.
Apologies. Hold on a minute. I will play
and I
it.
think while you're doing that, I mean, Soroptimists International is about empowering women and through education, and this whole thing is really, really important. Okay. I think if you can fill your screen, I've got that plus all the ones down the side as well. So if you could share it without the extras, that would be great. If you filled the screen, you might be, it's getting there. Yeah, now we've got it. Brilliant, thank you.
Research to save women's lives. I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer when I was 32 years old. But you'd never guess from looking at me. The doctors tell me it's highly likely it will take my life in the not too distant future. I'm here to tell you what you need to know to protect yourself and the people you love from ovarian cancer, but also what we all need to do to protect future generations from this awful disease. 1, ovarian cancer is not detected with a cervical smear. You need to know the symptoms. 2, if you remember nothing else from this talk at all, remember this, the 2-week rule. If you notice any change in your body and it lasts for 2 weeks or longer, particularly if it's new, unusual, or getting worse, you should let a doctor know. 3, know your family history. Ovarian cancer is much more likely if you have a family history of breast, ovarian, or prostate cancer or other cancers. But most women who are diagnosed don't have any family history. 4, the symptoms can be really subtle. The ovaries are the size of almonds and very deep in our tummy, but they can grow to the size of a golf ball, a tennis ball, or even a basketball. They're located near the bowel, the bladder, the stomach, the uterus, and the vagina. So depending where the cancer grows, you can get symptoms in any of those areas. Things like bloating, eating smaller portions and feeling fuller, and indigestion. Things like a change in bowel habits or needing to pee urgently or more often. Painful intercourse or bleeding between periods or after menopause. Pain or discomfort in your stomach, your pelvis, or your back. Unexplained weight changes and fatigue. Any of those symptoms can be a sign of ovarian cancer. The tests for ovarian cancer that your doctor can do are a pelvic exam, a CA-125 blood test, and a transvaginal ultrasound. You need all 3 tests to rule ovarian cancer out. The chance of them finding ovarian cancer is about the same as a routine mammogram finding breast cancer, but early detection is really important. So that's what you need to know to protect yourself and your loved ones. But what about the big picture? How do we stop women dying from this awful disease? Ovarian cancer is our least survivable woman's cancer. It kills 1 woman every 48 hours. That's more than a growth toll, than skin cancer, and then all the other gynecological cancers combined. It's under-researched and under-resourced. Unbelievably, 20 years ago, ovarian cancer was taught in the medical profession as a silent disease. It was only in 2000 that someone decided to research this and proved that most women experience symptoms. 40 years ago, the survival rates of prostate and ovarian cancer were almost the same. Now, 9 in 10 men survive at least 5 years post their diagnosis, the same as breast cancer, but only 4 in 10 women do. What does that mean? That means that since I've been diagnosed, since I've been diagnosed, 2/3 of the women that I've met have died from ovarian cancer, which makes me lucky in many respects, even though I don't know if I'll live to see my 40th birthday. Which brings me to the crux of things. For a long time, the public weren't comfortable talking about ovaries, which is why in New Zealand, for every person diagnosed, breast cancer receives 10 times more donations than ovarian cancer. What does that mean? It means 10 times more research and social support if your cancer is up here than down here. And when we talk about research, well, the largest government research funder in the world has funded prostate cancer research at a rate 18 times that of ovarian cancer relative to lethality. And most years, the New Zealand government doesn't fund any ovarian cancer research at all. And that's really why most women die, why the survival rates have hardly changed in a decade. And it's why the government needs to step up and fund dedicated ovarian cancer research. And that's why we need the public to get behind us, to support, to donate, to fundraise, to share cure our ovarian cancer. Because the future that awaits me is not the future we want to give to the next generation of women. They deserve so much better, and we can give it to them. The thing is, progress in ovarian cancer isn't limited by science, it's limited by funding. And that's something that each and every one of us have in our power to change. So please show your support for ovarian cancer and help women beat this.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Maddie, for showing that. If you Google that, you'll get a better production of it with actually Jane speaking synchronized with her voice. But you can see the intensity of her message and how that has impacted on a young woman to be diagnosed like that at the age of 32. It's a very moving piece, and I'm pleased that we've been able to share, because it made a difference to me when I saw that. It really touched me. And I think that, you know, you can look at stats and you can look at that, but when you meet somebody who's been through that journey, it just makes that big difference. Before we go on to Danelle, I thank you, Andrea, for sharing all of the national project that we do and we are undertaking in New Zealand right now. And if anybody would like to support us, there are ways of doing that. Just before we move on to Danelle, I just got a couple of messages from the question box. There's a message from Terry who says, Kath, I've got a feedback to you. You're awesome to speak out and speak up from your personal experience and ongoing campaign to make public when we're told to be private about our women's bodies. And she sends her my aroha nui, which means big love to you. She's going to go out and find some red knickers in our town. So well done, Terry. And then a message from Chris Knight, who's the president of Danelle's Club, actually. Well done, Kath, viva la vulva. I was on a Zoom meeting last week with Kimberly Downs, the CEO of Australian Gynecological Cancer Foundation, who knows you. It was a great presentation about philanthropy and how she works with other organisations to pool funds so more research can be taken. So that's from Namaste from Chris Knight. So those two messages from Kath's presentation. So so it's wonderful that we're getting that kind of feedback. So Danelle, if we could move on to you now as our third and final speaker on your journey, what you've learned, and a few pearls of wisdom about cervical cancer. Thank you, Danelle.
Right, thank you so much for the invitation to be part of this. And I think everybody can access the PDF over in the chat box. Well, I won't bore you with what's inside there because I think you'll enjoy the very quick read. It's a little booklet, and that one's not the one that's graphically designed, but at least it gets in the story. So I want to be a good news story, and I'll leave the best part to the end. But why is it important to talk about cervical cancer? The thing is, we've had pap smears, and we talked about pap smears for some time, but in Queensland it's been free since the end of the 90s. But I realise that some of the other states in Australia it's not free at all. It's actually $400 to have a pap smear and perhaps a follow-up ultrasound if there's a problem. But and you've got to invest, whereas we've got it down to such a fine art to have a pap smear these days. And then when you get the results of the pap smear, some of the doctors are absolutely useless, including females, but when you get the results, some of them forget to ring you or forget to say something, and the person on the reception's gone on holidays and you don't even know that your results are there. So when you get the results, there are CIN 1, 2, 3, and 3's the warning sign that there's something worse afoot. Oh, well, not in your foot. Now, and why did I even bother to even write a book or talk about this is because my sisters, my own sisters, were so ignorant and had no idea. And one was so fearful to go and get a pap smear. And our mum died with cancer, but breast cancer, when she was very young, early 40s. And, you know, that's enough of a bell to ring that you go and do it. So I wrote this as a humorous story, but a personal story, because women are frightened. And I wanted to dissipate some of that fear, because you don't need to be embarrassed about your body. You don't need to be, because the doctors and the nurses and the people who follow through are all professionals. And they are there for that purpose, and they will get on with it. However, the journey that you're going on while you're being so vulnerable, as you can imagine, so vulnerable, is how you deal with it. And I dealt with it in a very strange way, but it's in the book. Now, part of the reasons that my sisters were also very ignorant, they said, oh, you've got cancer down there, you just have a hysterectomy, it'll all be over. And I said, no, I'm going to lose all my womanly parts. And no, there were many stages. There were 4 stages to my journey. And having the CIN, I got in straight away the next day to a private gynecologist, and a tiny little Asian man who was used to having tiny little Asian women, and I'm 6 foot tall and I'm not tiny. So I didn't fit on his bed, his first bed or his second bed. But anyway, that's another story. And yes, and yes, all your inhibitions sort of have to fall by the wayside, because this is serious business when someone's talking about, you know, your life might be in the balance and you don't know how far your cervical cancer may have progressed. Because my stupid female doctor, and I shall say that, said, oh, you don't need these every year. And I've had abnormal cells since 1984, but, oh, you don't need these every year, she says. Anyway, I left it 2 years, and of course it was more than we could have handled. So as soon as the gynecologist, once he got on his little tiny teddy, you know, the Tommy turtles that you have for children to learn to potty train, you know, to use the toilet. Well, he got on his little Tommy turtle to go and try and climb over my legs so that he could actually get a look. And then I ended up in stirrups, because that's much better. But he probably had to get on the tiny turtle for that too. But I was a little bit busy at that time. And they've got funny instruments, of course, that go ping, and other tiny instruments that have to go very interesting places. And they have internal ultrasounds. And that actually measures the Andrea's a vet, so she probably knows lots of things. But because it's a human we're dealing with, it's a little bit difficult or confronting. But anyway, he said, how could your doctor not see this, he says. And because the lesions were quite, one big lesion was quite large. But anyway, with those, I wanted to write the story about the fears that people may have. And what has happened since I shared this, it was last year I shared it, but it got officially launched on the 21st of January this year at the UN for the WHO day they dedicated to cervical cancer, but I'll get onto that shortly. So part of the fears were when you're preparing for all these surgeries, some women had never had, the stockings, the hats, the whole works, all the prep that you have to do for sometimes 3 days before you go for surgery, and then what you have to do when you're, all sorts of things. But one of them was you're going to have all these metal nipples that are very important for your vital for your instruments to monitor your vital signs while you're under anaesthetic. And of course, sometimes they forget to take off the nipples, and here you are looking like a mother dog with all these metal nipples on you. And I had to explain quite a few things, especially since people who hadn't gone through this, and some women are 80 and have never had an operation. I thought, how marvellous was that? What a good life, or what were they ignoring is probably more the question, all their lives. But I also wanted to talk about things in layman's terms. I wanted to talk them in how women might speak and young women might speak to each other, but I also wanted the scientific terms, and I put in the references for the really important people who really want to know the analytical medical things. So there's hot links through the book, electronic book as well. So if people are really interested. Anyway, we had 4 stages, and of course the last stage, I worked all through this, by the way. I was doing over international master classes in other countries, and they didn't have any, they wouldn't even talk about female parts, Muslim countries and things like that. So it was quite interesting. But anyway, they just thought I was going to die, so they better listen to me in my master classes. But guess what? I didn't die. The hysterectomy, there's 5 sorts of hysterectomy, but since I've written the book, I think there's 6. So there's all different sorts of hysterectomy. So when we had, and if you're currently online looking at the PDF, there's the shading for which parts they're taking out. So cervical is the top of the vagina. So we put the pap smear, we take our test from the rim at the top of the vagina. So you enter the vagina, you have a rim there, and then you have your uterus, and then the ovaries in the fallopian tubes and the ovaries. So when we decide to do hysterectomies, there's also your what they call a radical or total. No, can't remember now. One of those special hysterectomies, you take the lymph nodes out as well. So some women have to have that as well. So, so I'm talking a little bit deeper than yours, Kath. But like you said, you picked yours up with a pap smear, didn't you? So very important. So what I have there was quite a few adventures. Every time I went to hospital, there was some sort of thing, that hiccups that happened. And I wanted people to be aware that hiccups can happen. Life isn't perfect in a hospital either. There's things that happen that make you feel worse and better and more fearful. So I talked about those fearful things and how to get around them. And also I talked about, even after having a hysterectomy, there are benefits to life. My life changed for the better afterwards in so many other ways. And I suppose in this forum, I can talk about that. I had less pressure on my bladder because I had a retroverted uterus. I was not allergic to deodorants and perfumes anymore. So I had been sort of a bit of allergic since about 2008. So that had gone away. I had much better, no backache anymore. So after having a hysterectomy, there are all these other benefits to life that you hadn't articulated or even calculated before. So the quality of my life has improved so much. I don't get migraines anymore. I can eat chocolate and drink red wine without any impacts now. So the thing is, there's so many good things by being brave and asking questions. So I was very I wanted to know everything about everything every time I met a medical person. So the thing is, by my personality wanting to know those sorts of things, I wasn't fearful. I was always, put my hand up every time I said, if there's a cancellation for a surgery, a cancellation, I want to be thought of first. So I got in very quickly. I started with the private system, but my private man, who couldn't guarantee that my loop, my lasso around my cervix, my first one, he couldn't guarantee that he had got all of and he hadn't. So he immediately referred me to the public system. In the public system, I was so impressed. We had 9 different professionals sitting around the table every Monday, and I had a case manager. So those 9 people talked about my case, and my case manager rang me straight away with the results of their decisions or what they talked about. So I felt that they were looking after me. So I had top care, and that was public. That was the public system. So I'm really forever thankful. I'm very disappointed with the Queensland Cancer Council because none of their documents and none of their support systems were advertised in the oncology ward. And when you're in the waiting rooms, there were plenty of opportunities for them to say about their support systems. They had none. I really had the public hospital system was brilliant. We had social workers, occupational therapists to prepare you before you had operations. They prepared you about how disabled you're going to be, how to set up your house, your bathroom, how to have rubber mats, how to lazy Susan on the car seat so that you always keep your legs together after you've had this. You don't straddle anything because it just hurts everything, plus probably does damage. So with a lazy Susan, you can actually spin with your knees together, and you can manage all these things gracefully and painlessly. So the thing is, there's learning how to roll over in bed, learning how to sit on the toilet, learning how to go to the toilet. You lean forward to pee and you lean backwards for the other. And the thing is, that helps your internal systems actually work, as well as prevent pain. Now, these are funny little tips, but they make life livable, and you recover, so it is very personal. But at the same time, I educated my sisters. I've educated so many young girls under 40 because I was previously pap smears were only recommended after 40. Well, any women who have children, all sorts of people have had women. Girls have had pap smears, and one of my Soroptimist ladies said, "Oh, is cervical cancer an STD? You know, did you get it? You know?" And I said, "No, you have a HPV virus in your body, and if you're run down, it's going to manifest in the weakest place. So you don't even have to have sex to have cervical cancer or to catch cancer." So now I want to get on to the good news stories. The good news stories are that girls in high school, grade 9, so about 12, 13 years old, are having vaccines. Ian Fraser got an international award for the vaccine that they have, and his sons were the first boys who had the same vaccine. So now both teenage boys and teenage girls at high school can be vaccinated as a preventative. Now, you say, why did the boys get vaccinated? The boys who could spread it to other girls are preventative for them, but this same virus manifests in boys and men too. So if it's a preventative for women, it is also a preventative for the men. So this is the good news story. And there's a further good news story. At the moment, about 5 million women die a year from preventable cervical cancer. These vaccines that are now made available in other countries and developing countries everywhere. Australia provides a lot. We have different technologies for delivering that. You don't have to have it cold and in your arm as an injection anymore. Apparently, you can have it in those prickly band-aids that we do for tropical countries, so you don't even have to be a doctor or a nurse to administer those things anymore. So the good news is that the WHO, as on the 21st of January this year, 2022, has declared that cervical cancer may be the first cancer that we can completely eradicate and eliminate and prevent. So the prevention part, if we've got early intervention as soon as, please girls, get your pap smears, grandmas, get your pap smears. They now don't send letters out to people when they're 75 as if you're going to, oh, you're not worth thinking about anymore. But if you're 75, you go in and get your pap smear too, because, you know, a little like in the last thing, that 2-week rule, I think it's the onus is on us. If the systems, we have this wonderful, we're living at a time when all of this is preventable. And if it means the obligation, the onus is on us to care for ourselves, not for the medical system to chase us, and for us to be on the front foot, and it's all preventable. So what is my call for Soroptimists? They say always a call for action. The call for action is go look after yourself, be bold, get advice, jump on it quick, ask more questions, forget your ego and your embarrassment, go and face your inhibitions and go get seen to, and don't be embarrassed by anything that happens in a hospital, because they see it every day and they see probably a lot worse than what we might have to offer. So really, and the thing is, share your stories, because it's so healing. And when I wrote it, it was after I got a clearance. So we have to wait 5 years before you get a clearance from cancer, and you're really not supposed to celebrate until after that. So part of my celebration was writing this and making sure that if I prevent that in even one other person, or I've made life easier for one other woman, I think I've done my job. But I think I've probably done even better than that. My sister-in-laws who live out in the bush, I got them to come down to the capital cities, because the capital cities have many more specialists available, even at half a day's notice, as I was able to do for one sister-in-law. But the thing is, what can we do? The onus is on us, and we just need to share and be best sisters for each other. So thank you.
Thanks, Danelle. Going through the journey and sharing it with humour. I think I read your book. I watched the video that is there, and I think that that's part of your way of. And the same with Kath. It's that twinkle in the eye and being able to laugh as well as to tell the story. I think is to make it possible for people to listen to and take notice. And to bring about that joy of making the most of what we've got, no matter what it is, whether it's be cancer or anything else. And I think that's why I love being a Soroptimist. It's about potential, realising our potential. And all three of our guest speakers are active Soroptimists, and that's really, really cool. It's a good beating of the drum to join the organisation. My goal for this NZ Soroptimists Online is to one day create a virtual club. In the meantime, what we're doing is we are sharing what Soroptimists do. The last webinar was on the refugee situation in Ukraine, and we had a Soroptimist from Romania sharing, and then we also had the Nelson Club, what they did to raise $20,300 in New Zealand from Nelson to send to Poland. And we've got the Polish Soroptimist on this call. So Anna from Poland, welcome. We've thrown it open so that for any Soroptimist club anywhere they meet in the world, they welcome guests, and this is one way of us welcoming women from all over the world to this particular forum. And I just think that this topic is so essential. I remember going to a menopause workshop myself when I was flushing away, and I learned so much about myself that I was embarrassed that I had such little knowledge about how my body worked. You know, I had children, and I thought the body just kicked in amazingly well, and it's a wonderful thing. And I just think that learning about it, we can celebrate those aspects that are working well and look after the aspects that aren't. I just wonder whether there's a final roundup. I've got a few comments about here. Okay, so more comments about the same about getting her hysterectomies and reacting to it. I think that those stories are really important. So maybe we can wrap up with a statement from the three of you about what's the essential thing that you want to be the takeaway point for those who are on this call. We've got 26 who are attending, plus those of us presenting and behind the scenes. Plus, I've just got a message from Annette Smith from Waimea in Nelson to say that they've got 30 women there watching this webinar. So there's a big coverage for us, plus the recording, of course. So one takeaway. Kath, what about you? What's your one essential message that you would like the women on this call to take away?
Well, being one-minded, I would like everybody to understand and use correct terminology that a vulva is not a vagina, because that's very, very important. I remember seeing a tube of vagina cream as saying to rub on your vagina, but not for internal use.
Okay.
So just dare to be vulval aware, that's all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Raise the awareness. Andrea, a takeaway from you?
Yeah, I think the big thing for me is trust your body and keep going until you get the answers that you need. We know our bodies best, and we just need to keep going sometimes and get support around you to do that as well. There are people out there who will help you and share the message amongst your women and male networks. Actually, everybody should know about this.
Yeah. I do remember being in Cambodia when we launched a club there, and we were out on the streets raising awareness about breast cancer, and we had men stop and wanted to know more because of their mothers and their wives, and because there was nothing available for them. And so, it's not just women on this journey. Yeah. So Danelle, one simple takeaway from you, we'll wrap up.
I've got two. One is that the most important asset that you have is your health. So we have to look after that asset. And the other one is, yes, after you have a hysterectomy, sex is better too. So don't be afraid, and don't be afraid of men afterwards. It actually works, and probably without all the hang-ups. So, yeah. So there's probably two messages there.
Two messages. Good afternoon now. I think there are lots of things that we can take away. Just give me a minute while I check the question box to make sure that we've covered everybody. Stories. Yeah, I find it very difficult to get the. Just bear with me.
I'll tell you a little story while we're waiting.
Okay.
My sisters were so concerned. They said, just have a hysterectomy and it'll all go away. And I was worried about my femininity and whatever. And they said, you still got a hole there. And I'm just,
okay.
It looks the same from the outside. And I'm just, no, So yeah. My litmus test were my sisters. So in the end, yes, isn't it funny? A bit close to home.
Okay, so let me see here. Somebody had shared. I had a full hysterectomy when I was 33, nearly 30 years ago. Pap smears every year, and I still keep my ovaries. I kept my ovaries. I had some blood tests and CT scans last week to check that everything's okay. The doctor has now recommended a pap smear every 5 years. It's so good to have these safe places to share these conversations. Bev Herbert advised that the rate of cervical cancer in the Solomon Islands is extremely high, and she was all set to roll out testing prior to COVID, and sadly it has all come to a halt. Some Soroptimist members will remember the wonderful project that was initiated by the Italian Soroptimist members. We're so she's saying, this is Chris, we're so fortunate in Australia we can get to these tests done. Prevention and education is so important. Well done for Danelle for sharing your story and for putting it into a simple booklet that others can read and share. Okay, that's well done. And thank you, Danelle and Andrea, for your participation today. I'm enlightened with these topics, so thanks Terry. Thank you for your realness, comes from Nita, for your boldness to cut away treating this lightly. Appreciate the authenticity. A privilege to have been one of the viewers. Thanks, Nita. And from Miracle, kia ora all. What an inspiration to hear from all of you this evening. It's an honour to be here sharing your journey. Thank you. Ka te nui te aroha.
Kia ora, Miracle. I think Miracle spoke at one of the region meetings recently. Thank you, Miracle.
Yeah, she's explaining that aroha mai, that in bit is ka nui te aroha, means big love.
Can I ask a question? Sorry, can I ask Danelle a question?
Sure.
It seems to me like the younger generation are having sex earlier, and is it 25 when you first have your pap smear?
Well, I think the younger generation are having sex later because it was school age and when I was growing up. And anyway, what was the second part of the question?
But it really concerns me that these younger people are having sex so early, and then you don't have a pap smear, first pap smear until 25. It really concerns me what goes on in that time. But do you know anything about that?
Well, we recommend anyone who's concerned, a mother can take her daughter in, and especially if she's had sex, if she's worried. So I don't think there's a cut-off age. The only stipulation we have in Queensland is if you're 75, you don't get a recall every year. So the department won't send a letter out, but you'd front up anyway. You don't.
But the young ones that concern me, what's happening there. Yeah, but I just thought I'd put that out there because I think we need to have better sex education to the younger ones so that they understand what is actually happening.
Oh.
So another question came through from Sandy. Do STIs affect the chance of gynae cancer?
I don't think it helps. Well,
it helps. Okay.
I think it's a pretty sacred place and you don't really want to have too much going on there that you don't want. So really you're still in charge of your body and what goes in it.
Yeah, I think the relationship between HPV and cervical cancer has been well established. That's not necessarily sexually transmitted, it can be transmitted through other mechanisms as well, I believe. But I think there's just not enough research or information about the other cancers to know. The work hasn't been done to know if that's the case or not. But I agree with you, Danelle. I think the healthier we can stay and the less exposed to things as possible, the better for everything, for a whole range of reasons.
But tell that girl to make him wear a condom.
That's
wear a
right.
condom, safe sex.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just checking if there's any hands up. It's got these tiny wee screens that you're meant to be able to pluck your way through. Right? Okay, so I think that we've covered the comments and we've covered the questions. I think we've covered our time. Once again, thank you for our presenters. It's been very enlightening and it's encouraging people to look further. Your book is there, Danelle, for downloading. So just ending up with, there are ways of supporting this. I mean, Danelle's got a book there. If you want to make a donation to that, just write to me on nzsoroptimist.online@gmail, and we'll find out further if you wish to give to that cause. For ovarian cancer, there are 3 charities that are working hard in that field. So that's where fundraising can be directed. Is that right, Andrea? There's 3.
Yeah, those are the 3 that we're mainly supporting through the project. But I would ask that any clubs that make a donation or Soroptimists just let us know, because we want to keep a track of that nationally in terms of how much we're actually supporting and how much we're raising to support this project.
Right, because we want to be able to make a statement about what New Zealand Soroptimists have done in this line. Right. Yeah, and Kath, there's been, as well as advocacy, are you looking for finances for research or
well, I would love, because there is no research for vulval cancer at this research group in Australia, but the thing is you'd need need a truckload of money to get them to come on board with that, and I just can't see that happening. But if anybody wants to donate towards my former not-for-profit that I established, it's gain.org.au. But again, it would be great for Soroptimists to have the money, perhaps money going to them, and try and work out how you can allocate the money, say to ovarian cancer or whatever is chosen at that time. So it's just something we need to have a look at, where best to channel the money.
Well, since I'm a program person, I think if you're raising money in your own country for this, I think it has to be not documented, and through your program you can see where your money goes and how I think it's really important that anything that Soroptimists do is recognised properly, because not only is it your own country that, or your own region or your own club, it's actually internationally, it's really important that we prove ourselves and that we've got the evidence to do so. So yes, please use Soroptimists. That's what we're here for.
That's right.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Kath from Western Australia, Danelle from Queensland, and Andrea from Wellington. I think women's health is alive and well with advocacy. So, and get those program reports done to support having our voice being recognised as being a grassroots level organisation, knowing what's going on the ground and reporting such. That strengthens our link to the UN and other agencies. So everybody, thank you, and good night from us. And next time we are meeting again in, sorry, can't help myself. We're doing this once a month, and next month's webinar will be on probably on the structure and what is Soroptimists International, and then the November one will be on the 16 days of activism, which is violence against women. And so that's what I'm working on at the moment. So if you've got any other ideas, please let me know. But thank you very much, and good night.
Thank you, Yvonne. Good job, and
Well
the
done.
others. Thank you. Bye.
Nice to meet you. Bye bye.
Yes, you too. Bye bye.
Okay. Okay, so right then.